Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you are all well on this marvellous, amazing, fabulous, wonderful, fantabulous Friday. And do you know what else is fantabulous? You look fantabulous. Absolutely amazingly so. And we made it through the week. We made it together. And Friday, we're going to do something a little bit... There's going to be a bit of a room splitter. I know it's going to piss people off, but you know me, I don't really care, because ultimately the Idaho 4 case is something that is a staple to this channel. It's a staple because I am one of those people who simply cannot let go of things once I get them. I'm like a dog with a bone, and I feel that there are so many things going on in this case that I simply don't trust. And when you look at what's happening in the Delphi case as well, it proves that you shouldn't always just be a sheep and follow the herd and go with the most popular narrative. And that may be that Bryan Kohberger is the person who done it, and don't you dare say otherwise. You'll upset them. You'll upset the people. But look, Bryan Kohberger could be guilty. He could be guilty, and later on down the line, we may be shown an abundance of evidence that proves that he is in fact the one who did it. He did it alone. He's just an absolute psycho. And when we looked at Adam Matos yesterday, there was similarities within those two crimes, both quadruple homicides, and both of these guys look like they wouldn't say boo to a goose. Unless you're Mrs. Harsh. He says it's all in the eyes, and both Bryan Kohberger and Adam Matos both look like psychopaths. Maybe that's women's intuition, and they are, in fact, correct when they say so. But at the end of the day, Bryan Kohberger has not been found guilty yet, and there are so many things in the Idaho 4 case that raises eyebrows. Nothing more so than Ann Taylor, the legal representation of Bryan Kohberger, who turns around and says, there is no connection between my client and the victims. You've shown no reason for him really being here. There's evidence, of course, but that is just somebody's interpretation of things. That is not what I would call definitive proof that he was there on that night and he did this crime. Yes, we have a knife sheath, and it seemingly has DNA upon that knife sheath, but the way in which that DNA was found is questionable at best, and we've got a long way to go to see how that pans out, and if it ever will. But what if Bryan Kohberger what if they're not able to find him guilty? Because let's not forget, that's what this is about. This isn't so much about the defense team proving his innocence. This is about the prosecution proving his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You know, the defense team just have to sit and wait. They have to maybe bat a few balls away, but the burden of proof lies with the prosecution. If they are unable to convince a jury of his guilt, then there is a problem, and then decisions will have to be made. Now, where do you stand with this? Do you stand in the court of if Bryan Kohberger, if they are unable to find him guilty, then we will just concede that Bryan Kohberger did it? They just couldn't prove he did it. Maybe he get out on a technicality or a hung jury, because that seems to be what we're staring down the barrel of at the moment, in my unprofessional opinion. But if they are indeed unable to prove him guilty, are people then going to start going back over the various things in the Idaho 4 case and feel that there is more significance to them things than they first thought? I'm struggling with English again today. It is my second language. I don't know what my first language is. But anyway, yes. Like I say, there are so many things in the Idaho 4 case that if you look at them on their own, then they don't seem like they're problematic. Like, lots of people have trawled over the fact that Bryan Kohberger was, when he was arrested in Pennsylvania at his parents' home, he was segregating rubbish and he had gloves on, which I would imagine that a lot of you guys have done. I've certainly done it. You know, we have to segregate rubbish, we have to recycle, and if I've got to go through and do that, then I will certainly be wearing gloves to do so. And Pennsylvania, especially this area where Bryan Kohberger's parents resided, it was the law that they did so, and there was fines if they didn't. And it would appear that the documentation surrounding the searches that were done of that property when he was arrested there wasn't any rewards reaped as such. We do have things in the Idaho 4 case that does indeed point to eyebrows being raised, such as the knife sheath and the DNA on said knife sheath, but we've argued this. We've argued the fact that it is easy for that situation to happen, and we've also questioned as to how that sheath got there in the first place. And let's not go into a deep dive on the DNA today, because that would take us about 3 weeks, because there is so many nuances to it and so many issues with it at the moment. It's been a huge bone of contention for the defense team. But like I say, lots of little things that if you look at them on their own and you take the heinous crime out of the equation, then they don't look so bad. But when you add in the fact that there is a heinous crime, there were 4 young adults who lost their lives on this fateful night, and then you pick and look at different things, then there's eyebrows to be raised, isn't there? The conversation that would say, what did you tell Adam? We've gone over this time and time again. And again, it could be completely innocent, but let's not forget, only a few hours after that, 4 young adults lost their lives. And Jack DeCoeur, I know right at the beginning, a lot of people were questioning Jack DeCoeur. And even though the Gonsalves family say that they stand behind Jack 1,000%, that's not also the case. Right at the beginning, the Gonsalves family did not stand behind Jack at all. So their automatic go-to, especially Steve, was to doubt Jack. And it would appear, if you believe what is in some literature, that Steve Gonsalves actually did a physical examination of Jack. And he had to do that in order to be sure that Jack was not involved. But you could argue that Brian Kohberger seemingly was free of injury himself. He had a medical a couple of days or the day after this, and he did, by all accounts, attend that medical, and I believe he had a haircut as well. So he was about doing his everyday thing. So you could argue whoever did this, it doesn't necessarily mean that they did or didn't do it if they did have injuries or did not have injuries. But both Jack DeCoeur and Brian Kohberger seem to be injury-free. Let's just put it that way. We know that there's DNA inside 1122 King Road that they did not go down the track with it. It is so far. We don't know whose it is. We don't know why they stopped. Maybe there was an abundance of DNA in there that they left. Jack DeCoeur's DNA would have definitely been in the house because he frequented the house. He was, at some point, Kaylee's boyfriend, after all. So his DNA in there may not have been an alarm bell. But did you know that we know that there were calls. There was calls from Kaylee to Jack that night, missed calls. But I didn't realise there were so many. It would appear that there was about 10 missed calls, 7 of them being on Kaylee's phone and 3 from Maddy's. Again, I don't know the complete 100% accuracy of that, but if we look here, let me just zoom out on this. Go out, out, out. So we do this, look. So here we go. So I'm going to read this here. All 4 students I'm going to highlight. Shall I highlight it for you? Look. We highlight this segment here. And we'll move it. Not off the screen. All 4 students were home by 1:56 a.m. 7 unanswered calls were made from the phone of Gonsalves to a former long-term boyfriend, a fellow student, from 2:26 to 2:52 a.m. Mogan also called Gonsalves' former boyfriend 3 times with similar results. I'd say exact results. Didn't get through. From 2:44 to 2:52. Now, bearing in mind that those pair got in at 1:56 a.m. That's what they're saying. So for approximately 1 hour, they seemed hell-bent on getting hold of Jack. Now, I'm not saying that Jack DeCoeur has done anything at all. I'm not saying that this shows that Jack DeCoeur is guilty of anything, but what I am saying is it would seem that for an hour, these girls really wanted to get hold of Jack. Rarely wanted to get hold of him. Now, was it just drunk girls trying to get hold of an ex-boyfriend? Now, I've spoken to the girls here. I have teenage daughters, and, neither of them said that after 1 or 2 calls not being answered, that they would continue for an hour and there'd be 10 missed calls. Surely that's a little bit... It makes you look a little bit desperate, doesn't it? Or it makes you look like you're in trouble. Maybe Jack's phone was on silent, who knows? But police would very quickly decide that Jack was not involved. But I wonder how they came to that conclusion. And again, I'm not pointing the finger at Jack and saying anything, but what I am doing is pointing the finger at the investigation and saying, so if Jack DeCure turns around and says he didn't answer that phone because he was asleep, is being asleep a good alibi? Is that enough of an alibi? Or is it just that you felt that Jack DeCure was not involved because you had your sights on somebody else who had informed you that they had been driving around in the area? Because at this point in time, when this was being looked at, I don't think Brian Kohberger would have even been in the picture, or was he? Who knows? But what I'm saying is, at this early stage of the investigation, from what I believe would have been one of the most earliest people to have been looked at, because you know how it is. The boyfriends are always considered involved. So what changed that? What changed it? Because I don't think going to sleep and being asleep, and I didn't answer my phone because I was asleep, is a good enough alibi. And again, this isn't about pointing the finger. This is about what happened, what shifted focus. Now, was it that they needed the focus shift, so somebody pointed the finger at someone else to take the shift away from one or more people? Who knows? But I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Was it that law enforcement indeed were pointed in the direction of someone else? And was that rightfully done? Again, if you feel that Brian Kohberger is indeed guilty, you probably feel that it is rightfully done. But what about you guys who believe in innocent until proven guilty and you haven't seen enough yet? And you feel that there's a potential that this entire case has been reverse engineered in order to fit Brian Kohberger? Was this the knee-jerk reaction of Jack DeCure and the fraternity being looked at? Did something need to budge in order to shift focus, shift the gaze? Let me know down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one.